Just
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle. Maybe.
hey guys, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Thanks. Do you have video on or
no?
Okay.
We're hanging in there on this rainy day. You guys too?
Yeah, we're still in our pajamas. That's why we don't have the video on. We don't look like you.
Quickly changed out of mine so that I could go on video.
Make sure your camera doesn't pan down below the waist. I know you've got pajama pants on.
Yeah, you know, that's one of my favorite things. Usually wear shorts with you know, a suit jacket on top, but flip flops on. That's about as good as it gets.
Morning, Jimmy.
Jimmy is actually a phantom. We're using his account, so I don't think that he's actually president.
Okay.
Administrator, so it's just us right now.
All righty.
So you could start the video if you want to.
Steffi and I were just having a discussion about the name of the community versus civic versus citizens association. So Stephanie had done the research and to your point, I didn't know any of that obviously, but Stephanie did some looking into it also after you asked about it so we could just make the right decision. And it's crazy how much little, how significant names can be, you know, and if you don't know the context, right?
Yeah, no, it was something that I wasn't aware of until I moved here and got involved in the organization, started asking questions about, you know, why we have both. And I think some of the longer residents who've been here longer feel like they made a really conscious choice to have both of them because they wanted to break with the past. And I think we might hear some of those views, but so far, the majority of people that have responded to the survey favor changing it, which is interesting.
They favor what?
They favored what? We missed the last part.
They favor changing it to get rid of the citizens.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Citizens was the bad, the white only. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Great. So I guess maybe when you wrote that, people either checked or just hadn't thought about it, because obviously it would have happened sooner, right? If people knew that was the inference behind that, or.
You know, I don't know. I do think that folks who were involved before knew about it, and they changed so that we would have both, so that it would signal that we wanted to be as a community more unifying.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Some of those folks would be able to speak more to it, I think.
All right. Well, great. Thanks.
Paul and Laura were involved. A few more folks to join. Rosemary, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but I don't have a camera, so you won't be seeing me.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Morning, Stan, how are you?
Got my video on now.
Yeah.
I fixed it.
For everybody's awareness, we're recording so that we'll be able to post this for folks who aren't able to join. How you doing, Stan? Thanks for joining. I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh man. Hang on, I did something else now. I lost your picture just. Oh, anyway, yeah, I'm doing well, man. How you doing, Terry? That's not Terry.
This is Elson.
Hey, Stan.
Hey,
Good
Stan.
morning, Nelson.
How you guys doing?
We're good. We can hear you just fine. Can you hear us? And I'm not sure if you're able to see us. Are you just calling in from phone line?
Yeah, I'm calling in because my internet is down.
Oh, no.
Crazy.
Is it related to the storms or what?
I have no idea. Yesterday it went out. I was able to get it back up. But for some reason it's down again. So who knows? But I will.
Phone service.
I'll try to get it back up. But in the meantime, I'm on the phone.
So are you going to call them out, man? What service do you have? You going to call them out?
It's Verizon.
Oh, man, so do I, and I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Morning, Kyle.
No.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Good morning,
morning.
Jacqueline.
It's Jacqueline.
Morning.
Who is it that has the 202-340-7588 phone number? Sure.
That's actually my number. I'm on the phone, but I'm dialed into Zoom.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another couple of minutes. I'm anticipating several other people said that they would be joining, so we'll give them just a minute.
Okay.
And for those who just joined, I did note that we're recording this session so that we can post it, just so everybody's aware.
So is it bad form to eat on these Zoom calls? I'm not
As long as you don't drool on your camera so that we've got all the crumbs on it, I think we can let it go.
Well, all right. That's what I'm going for, Dick. I am dying. I'm hungry.
As long as it's something good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What is it? Yogurt, muesli, pineapple.
There you go. I had my yogurt and trail mix, so
All right.
that works.
All right.
All right.
Hey, Terry, it says that you're Stephanie Clyro.
Yeah, I changed my name last week. I got tired of it. Tired of Terry.
That's what threw me off. That's Terry.
All right, Stan.
Good morning, all. Hi, Terry.
Hey, Miss Alberta.
Hey, Miss
How you
Paul.
doing?
Good
All
morning.
Hi, Kyle, Stan, Rosemary, Jimmy,
Good morning, Miss Paul. Good Paul Grant.
Yep.
Oh, Paul Grant. Okay. Mrs. Cannon and
Paul Grant.
Hello.
oh,
Morning.
okay.
And look at that. We've got some Morgans joining.
Hi, Jasmine. They're my babies. Hi, Matthew and Jasmine
Hello.
and baby girl.
Hi.
Hey, Miss Paul, what are you talking on? We can't see you.
My camera is broke.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
It's a government laptop.
Ah, okay. And
We
why are
won't
you using it for
tell.
personal
We
use?
won't tell.
Yeah.
All right. I know that Miss Richards is planning on joining and Dr. Burton is planning on joining. A couple others. We'll just give them another minute and then we'll get started. I don't want to waste anybody's time. For those who just joined,
Okay.
are recording this call so that we'll be able to post it and share with those who weren't able to join.
Say, Kyle, out of all the docs, which one should I have in front of me right now? I have all four, but which one should I be going to reference the most?
I think it's going to be up to where people have questions. So I'll give a brief introduction to Jacqueline for any comments, and then we'll let the folks who are participating lead the way the discussion goes.
Cool. All right, thank you.
Sure. I think we just had somebody else join us by phone. Who is that? Can you introduce yourself?
Hello?
Yes, who's that?
Morning.
Oh, hi, guys. It's Laura.
Good morning, Miss Laura. How are you?
Okay, let's see.
And I think that covers phone. Okay. Still expecting a couple of other people, but let's go ahead and get started and then they can join us in process. I think a couple other members of the bylaws subcommittee will also be joining, but thank you very much, everybody. I especially appreciate you taking time out of your very busy weekends and precious time to spend with family and do things that are not work, to talk with us about the Penn Branch Citizen Civic Association bylaws and articles of incorporation update effort that we've been working on during this term. So what I will do is just make a few opening remarks. I'll invite Jacqueline Cannon, our president, to make any opening comments. And then we're just going to open the floor and let people ask questions specific to any of the documents that we've sent out, which included the existing articles of incorporation, the draft updated articles of incorporation, the existing bylaws, and the draft updated bylaws, as well as our proposed calendar for how we're going to work through trying to get a vote on the updated articles and updated bylaws before we go to elections this fall. So first I'll start by thanking the members of the bylaws subcommittee. Right now, Ms. Rosemary Crockett is the only other one that is on, but I do anticipate that Joan McKenzie, who is another one of our members, and Dr. Cicely Hampton will be joining us at some point. They indicated that they plan to join today. They, in addition to Tad Dury, joined me over the last many months in working on this effort. What we did as first a board was, once we set out to update the bylaws and articles, we reached out to the DC Bar Pro Bono Center to set us up with a pro bono law firm that has expertise specifically in non-governmental operations and 501c3 organizations like ours, to try to get us the state of the art on bylaws to ensure that we are compliant with the DC corporation law from 2010 and other applicable laws that would apply to organizations like ours. We were paired with Latham & Watkins, which is a well-respected and well-known Washington, DC law firm. And we worked with them over several months to develop the documents that we have now. As a group, the bylaws subcommittee first looked at our existing articles of incorporation and bylaws and started as its point of departure there to ensure that we were building from what the community had already established for many years and decades as the priorities and the ways in which it organized itself. And we wanted to merge that with the state of the art in articles of incorporation and bylaws. We also reviewed similar organizations to ours. So we looked at Hillcrest, we looked at DuPont Park, we looked at organizations elsewhere on Capitol Hill and further in Northwest. We found that Hillcrest bylaws and Cleveland Park community were two that we really liked for their simplicity and their content. And so we aimed to try to figure out how, with the team of legal counsel that we were able to secure on a pro bono basis, that we could try to pull together all of these different threads into a document that we all were happy presenting to the board as a draft and then presenting to the community for comment. And so that's where we are now. We've given a lot of thought and put a lot of work. There have been literally hundreds of emails, dozens of meetings, countless hours of phone calls and work, all by volunteers and our neighbors and community members. So again, really want to thank those folks who put their time into this and gave a really good faith effort to this. So here we are Now, after the board has given its initial review to these documents and signed off on moving them to community comment and review, that's what we're setting out to do here, is take the first step to get your feedback and comments. We've delivered these out to the community at the beginning of this week. This is the first opportunity to, in this public forum, ask questions, make comments, allow me and the other members of the community to respond to those things and share information. And then you have an additional 7 days to provide any written comments, questions. We're asking for those by 7 p.m. next Saturday. That will allow us to compile people's views and questions and comments. And then we can send those back out to the community and share, here's a summary of what we heard during these engagements and from your comments. And then we will decide whether we need to hold another one of these question and answer sessions, or we need to produce an updated version of either or both of the documents and send them back out to people. And then we will move toward eventually, once we get to a place where we feel like we have addressed all the questions to the best of our abilities, resolved any disagreements, then the board will make a decision about scheduling a vote. At this point, we don't anticipate the vote happening probably before the later part of September next month, to ensure that we have ample time for everybody to review, ask questions, and provide input. But we also, like I said before, really want to ensure that we can deliver on this effort to update our Articles of Incorporation bylaws, hold new elections for an incoming board under these new bylaws, and then move forward into our new year on the new calendar with the new slate of officers and with these strong, legally compliant Articles of Incorporation and bylaws. So I'll stop there. I'll pass it over to Jacqueline to provide opening comments. Then I'll just give some brief instructions for how we're going to run this, and then we'll get started. So Jacqueline, any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, and thank you, Kyle. I just want to take a couple of moments to express my gratitude on behalf of the board and hold on one moment, please. I apologize about that. So yes, thank you, Kyle, and the Bylaws Subcommittee for your hard work and diligence and dedication over these past almost 2 years. This has been a major undertaking for the association board. And we are so appreciative of the time, the energy, the effort that you all put into being diligent, deliberate, thoughtful, and not to mention professional about ushering this major task and undertaking for the community. It has been it has been more than a notion, everybody. Under Kyle's leadership, I think the group has done an outstanding job of getting us to the point where we are today. 2 years, two years. It certainly didn't, I think on the onset, we didn't think it would take us this long, but given the pandemic period that we're in right now, it has delayed the process, but they've still forged ahead and made it happen. So I'm just excited that we're here now, and I'm very confident that Kyle and the team is going to lead us across the finish line. A couple of things I want to point out is that if everybody's not currently aware or have not seen, the current bylaws are on the Penn branch website. All of the new documents that Kyle is going to be reviewing and that we published out via email, they are also posted on the front landing page of the website. There's an update as of, I've been actually posting regular updates. There was an update that was posted on 7, the end of July, I believe it was, that the documents were coming. There was another post that was made on August 21 that the documents are almost ready. We're just getting final approval. And now the documents are there on the accessible from the landing page under the Penn branch bylaws update post. So please take an opportunity to, if you haven't downloaded the documents, download them. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that there's been a lot of discussion about whether to provide hard copies of the documents throughout the community, and in an effort to address those concerns and that issue, yesterday I called an emergency vote with the Penn Branch Board with the motion to make all of these documents accessible via hard copy to those who sent a formal request as such to Kyle or the info at Penn Branch dc.org website. So we're really trying to address all the different varying needs within the community. If any one of you know of people, seniors especially, those who are not don't have access to the technology, who you feel would need or want a copy of the hard copy of the documents, please help us out and take it upon yourself to deliver hard copies to them. We're not asking the block captains to deliver these documents or any other documents to the community during the pandemic, but we do encourage and ask those who want these documents to put them, to send a request to those email addresses. And I apologize, but I'm going to have to jump off the call very shortly. Oh, okay, we've had a death in my family, and I'm trying to do things when I get an extra moment here. But those are my comments, Kyle. Hopefully I didn't take up too much time, but I just wanted to make everybody aware that we're trying to make available the documents every place where we feel folks have access and can access to them. So I'll turn it back over to you, Kyle.
Before you go, deepest condolences on the loss in your family.
Same.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. I appreciate that. Thank you.
My condolences, Jacqueline.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. I appreciate you joining with all that you have going on, and truly on behalf of, I think, all of us in the community, we'll be thinking of you and your family and appreciating time that you take to spend with us.
Thank you. Well, this was important too, and I just wanted to, lend my support and let everyone know that this is an issue that is very critical to us completing in a timely manner. And I would just ask anybody who is on the call or who wants to offer, input or suggestions or whatever, now is the opportunity to do that. We want to be inclusive of all of those who want to engage with us. So Kyle, back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Jacqueline. I see that while we're talking, we've had some more folks join us. So welcome to all the people who have recently joined us. I see Dr. Jalan and Kamau joining. I think Kamau is looking like he's ready to run for president. Joan, thank you as well for joining. Do we have anybody else who has since joined since we began before we did introductions?
I joined also, Cal.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy. All right, so for those who recently joined, I'll just remind again that we are recording this so that we can post it for anybody who wasn't able to join. Now I want to jump into questions and discussion. As I mentioned in the email, to make sure everybody has enough time to ask questions and that we're able to kind of go around in a fair way, we're gonna limit each person per round to 2 minutes of comment and question, and then we'll go to the next person. And then once we get through a round, we can go back and people can ask as many questions as they like. We've got this scheduled to go as long as an hour and a half, so to 11:30 if we need that. And we're very committed to answering questions that people have. So if we don't get through things before then, you're welcome to send those questions to us via email, and then we can decide whether to respond to them via email or to hold another question and answer session. Elson is on the phone, and he's going to help us keep time and let folks know if we're getting close to running past the 2 minute comment question period per person. In order to let us know that, that you are interested in asking a question, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can raise your hand on screen. You can use the chat function to just either put in your question, or you can say, I have a question, and we will come to it. If you're on the phone, I will take several opportunities to pause and say, does anybody on the phone have a question? So don't worry, we will make sure we can get to you all well. It looks like we've got our first question from Dr. Jalan Burton saying, can you share a high-level summary for those of us with no legal background? I'm happy to do that. Joan, Rosemary, would either of you like to take that first one, or would you like me to take it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Kyle?
Sure. The question is, can you share a high-level summary for those of us with no legal background? I think this is a summary of what's in the articles and bylaws, what their intent is, so that folks who aren't familiar with these kinds of documents have their bearings.
Okay, and then who are you asking to give that summary?
Would you like to do it, Joan, or would you like me to do it?
Well, I can't give a summary of the details of what's in the documents because they're kind of self-explanatory. You know, each section reads for itself. But the purpose of bylaws and articles of incorporations are just to actually create an organization. So they're documents that are required by law if you want to become a legally recognized organization, which we are. So the purpose of those documents are just to set up how the organization is going to run, who's going to run it, who has the authority to sign documents to the organization, how are people elected, you know, how are the runners of the organization elected into office. The people who run the organization are the board members, and it also talks about how the organization funds itself, how it raises money, how money is handled, how it reports back to the members, which are members of the community that actually meet the membership criteria, which is detailed in the organizational documents, and also who pay a membership fee, which right now it's $20 per year. So it's basically just a document that creates the organization under the laws of the jurisdiction in which we live, which is the district, and just lets out the rules for how the organization runs itself and how it will, you know, report back to members, and then in the event that it dissolves, how it dissolves, and it just states that it is legal within the laws of the district. And then you also, the organization can also establish a term, whether the organization is going to be perpetual, or you can create an organization for, you know, that's only going to last a certain number of years. In our case, we've created a perpetual organization, so it would operate perpetually unless somehow it's dissolved. But that's the general
We're at time.
concept.
Okay, we're at time. Just want to let you know.
Sure, no, I'll end my explanation. It's no problem.
Thank you, Elsa. Thank you, Joan. I will add on just a little bit on the substantive changes. So the highlights of what we changed. First, the reason why we required changes is because our old bylaws were no longer compliant with the new law that DC passed in 2010. Our previous bylaws were written and I think adopted in their current form in 2009. And 2010, DC passed a new nonprofit corporation law. And so we needed to come into compliance with the legal elements that are required under that. And we took the opportunity to propose some other things that both were legally required, and also that as folks who had been involved, many of us had been either in officer positions or folks who had been involved in Penn branch for decades, in the case of Joan and Rosemary, and who have legal background, things that we thought would help with administering the organization. So here are the kind of biggest substantive changes overall, and I'm happy to go into details on any of them. First, on membership, we aim to simplify the membership categories. Under the current bylaws, there were lots of different kinds of membership. There's individual membership, there's household membership, they're at different prices, slightly different structures, who got to vote and how many people got to vote in a household. Those things were all outlined, but it was a little bit complicated, which made for difficulty in keeping good records, administering elections, dealing with things on the fly. And so we simplified it to just residents over 18 and that they're individual memberships. So anybody who's a resident of the community who's over 18 can become an individual member and be entitled to one vote in our elections or any of our action items. Businesses, nonprofits, friends of our community that are outside of the community are all eligible to be non-voting members, which means they pay dues, they get access to our communications, can certainly come and participate in our events and meetings, but they just can't vote. So that's on membership. The other kind of big change was synchronizing our fiscal year, our membership year, our tax year, and our meeting year. Right now, the tax year, which is a really important element of our maintaining our status and being in good stead with the IRS, runs on the calendar year basis, like all of us, and our paychecks, taxes taken out. But our fiscal year as an organization was different, and it was aligned to our membership year, which goes from fall through summer. And so we wanted to align those things and then also align our election calendar so that all of the major business of the organization would take place at the end of the calendar year, and then the new board and the new fiscal year and all those things would start on January 1st.
2-minute check.
Okay, thank you. So then the other quick changes, we updated our officers. We added one new position, first vice president and a second vice president. So instead of just a singular vice president, we'd have two. This is intended to bring in more leadership opportunities and to add continuity. And then we specified the nature of our committees. This was a legal requirement. There are two types of committee. There's either board committees under the law, or there's advisory committees. Board committees are strictly composed of members of the executive board. So that would mean that our committees could only be composed of elected officers. We know that as an organization, our committees are intended to bring in our members and residents, regardless of whether they're officers or board members. And so we needed to go with them being advisory committees. Under the law, advisory committees don't have the power to execute action independently. They need to coordinate with the board and get board approval for their actions. But we specified that's the kind of committees that we have, and that we then laid out what those standing committees would be, and they're consistent with the ones that we've had in the past. So those are the major changes. Want to give opportunities for other folks to ask questions. Thanks for those good questions. So who is next that has a question that they'd like to ask?
I don't know how to get my question into chat, so can I raise my hand?
Sure. Stan, would you yield to Ms. Paul for this question? Okay, thank you. Ms. Paul, go ahead.
Oh, I love the membership simplifications. You've done an excellent job on that. I really concur with that. I just want to focus on officers, as you have it outlined in your annotated proposed changes, which would rotate. We would vote for a certain set of officers at one point, and then another set at another point, which to me, as you have seen, communities are very difficult to bring together to do a nomination of officers, to bring together the community together, to hear who those proposed new officers are, and to vote on them. I think that we should not try to have some people serve for a certain period, because what you're proposing is two different elections, rotating people in and out. And I just would encourage us to solidify having one, as you have indicated, that we are operating on a every 2-year rotation, which historically has been the case, and not make it complex and have us voting twice, once in the odd year and then the next year, which is the even year, voting again.
Thank you,
Recruitment of officers is very difficult, and I've done it for 42 years, and I know things have changed, but I don't see the level of activism in this community that I saw 42 years ago. I see new young people in, but I don't see the level of participation that we desire. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. I appreciate that question. It draws attention to a really important part of what we were setting out to do. Rosemary, would you like to respond to that one?
Sure. I think on the one hand, Ms. Paul is definitely right. In small organizations like our civic association and other organizations, it's always a challenge to recruit talent to assume these positions. But I don't think we should give in to that. What we're trying to do is have officers elected in 1 year they will have a year's experience by the time the second half of the slate is elected the next year. So you have some continuity of experience going on for benefiting the Civic Association rather than having all new membership coming in at one time. And this is routinely done at a number of organizations around the city.
Can we
Thank you,
easily
Rosemary.
do that? Oh, I'm sorry. Can we easily do that? And in consideration, I'm not trying to be argumentative. All officers can serve more than one term. I don't think, or you can modify the bylaws to indicate they can serve 2 consecutive terms, and then therefore you have continuity. I just want to put that on the plate, not being argumentative, but why not add in the bylaws that all officers elected in that specific year that we have all embraced for 42 years, it can serve 2 consecutive terms if the community deems appropriate. Or I don't want to use the words, but that's basically what I'm saying. Therefore, you would have the continuity. And in most cases, historically, if you look at your file cabinet that Jimmy will share with you, a lot of the past presidents served for 4 years, and their vice president, their treasurer, their secretary. That gives you the continuity.
Ms. Paul, thank you. I think this does raise a really important question, and happy to have other folks weigh in. I think a couple of things. On the term limits question, these proposed updated bylaws do not include term limits. So it is completely possible for somebody to remain in the same office or position for consecutive terms for as long as the community supports them. And I think as a group, we felt like that was important for exactly the reason that you raised, which is that one, sometimes it's difficult to find people who have the time and the willingness to lead. And if somebody is doing a good job and they want to continue and the community supports them, then we see it as not in the interest of the community to push that person out of that role any sooner than they want to or the community wants them out. So absolutely agree that that kind of continuity is important. I think on the question of electing each year, another part of what we thought was beneficial about doing this is that it creates an annual rhythm for the organization and for all of its members, where while the officers that would be elected in the even years are roughly half of the slate, and then on the odd years, the other half of the slate, every single year at the same time, our members would be considering new nominations and they would be voting. And so each October we would have a voting meeting and we would talk about the upcoming year's budget. And so instead of every other year trying to have to start afresh with a nominating committee that has to go out and look for new people, this would allow us to kind of keep those elements of the organization warm and just have them coming back each year to run this process and allow people to participate and vote each year. It also, I think the continuity element was extremely important to us. The other part was the accountability element. There certainly has been times when I've heard members of the community, whether about me or about anybody else, that folks want an opportunity to vote on whether we're doing a good job and to potentially make changes in the leadership of the organization. And leaving that every 2 years might be, it's less responsive than if every year the members of the organization have a chance to say, we want some new people in these officer positions. Are there any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I have a follow-up comment on that one. This is Laura. On term limits, the community put in term limits and felt it was something that was felt very strongly, about. And with 2 consecutive terms, and then if the community really wants you, you can come back. But to have no term limits, we had found leads to sort of leadership in perpetuity through inertia. So therefore, I would suggest that that you at least give the community a chance to weigh in specifically on term limits. And I think that's even more important than the annual elections. I do find the annual elections sort of a bit like unwieldy for a group of our size. And, you know, I'm in groups that use that, but they're larger, the staggered terms. But I just feel very strongly that we need to retain term limits, or at least specifically put that as a question for the community to call their attention to that with particularity. I think you may not grasp the importance of term limits to a number of longtime residents.
Thank you, Ms. Richards. I appreciate that. And I apologize, I missed that in our earlier ones, but you're absolutely right. It does say currently in our bylaws that folks can serve 2 consecutive terms. So let's pause on this particular topic for a moment and see if anybody else has questions or comments directly related to this issue of officer elections and term limits before we go to a new topic. So does anybody else have questions or comments relevant to that? I don't want to pick on anybody, but I think that it's a fair question on the table. Does anybody have a different view than what Ms. Richards just said, that we should have term limits in place? Does anybody want to make the argument that we shouldn't have them in place? Stan, go ahead. You're on mute.
Yeah, I can't make an argument about. I am against having term limits. I mean, it's hard enough to get somebody in that position in the first place. So when they time out in 2 years, we're usually just stuck. I mean, like, I don't know how to put my words, but I'm definitely against, at this point in time, definitely against term limits for sure.
I want to be clear that my comment was understood. I'm not suggesting a single term. I'm suggesting 2 consecutive terms, which gives a person 4 years in office.
I got you. I'm going to be quiet now.
Me too.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you for clarifying, Ms. Richards. Anybody else? Pause for a moment to see if people have questions or comments. Please don't be shy.
I know I've talked before, but I still want focus on recruiting additional officers that as it were, we are hard fast to do a president, vice president, recording secretary, corresponding secretary, treasurer, parliamentarian. And now we want to go to president, first vice president, second vice president. And I understood that you spoke to having additional leadership, but for the last 21 months, even with the level of officers we have not had consistent communication from the association to embrace over 30% increase in new home ownership of young people, so they know that you even exist. And I understand the pandemic, but I will close by saying I think that we should really think hard. Can we recruit all of these additional officers? That's number one. And number two, and I'll shut up. Number two, this data, we have a network of block captains, and I understand the pandemic. But yesterday, there were 2 young men in my block doing the census, and they did social distancing for 2 seniors. We have a network of block captains. Some of them may not want to do it because of their age. We're not asking them to interact with people, but to just physically leave stuff in people's boxes, their mailboxes, etc. We should all feel morally bounded by making sure that under the current bylaws, everybody
15 seconds. 15 seconds.
Changes so that they can give you feedback, Cal, and other members of your committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paul. I think those are fair points, and they're things that we can continue to discuss as a board with respect to getting information out. I will say that these are tough topics. As a board, we feel a responsibility to protect ourselves, our members, and our volunteers and our community. But obviously, I think the hardest situation is those folks in our community who might not have access to computers and who we certainly do not want to exclude. And so I'll reiterate what Jacqueline said at the start. If anybody specifically knows of anybody on their block, elsewhere in the neighborhood, who falls into that category that we need to proactively get paper copies out to, we can make that happen right away. In the meantime, in the next couple of days, the board will meet again and we can take up this issue of whether there is a mechanism for us to get things out to everybody. It is a heavy lift for lots of volunteers, but I understand and I'm sympathetic to it being important and that we do not want to inadvertently exclude anybody. Let me stick with just for another moment this issue of officers. Ms. Paul raised the issue of whether we should have the 7 officers or stick with the 6. And also we still have some opinions on the floor about whether to stagger the terms. Some of the folks that we haven't heard from yet, I will resist naming names, but if you fall into that category, if you have any views, I would really invite them now.
Hi, this is Joan. I want to go back to the term limits concept. I agree with Laura. I think term limits are very important, but you know, I understand Stan's point too, and I think that we can consider as a possible compromise is maybe do 3 consecutive terms instead of 2, so we can just increase it by another term. But I really do understand Laura's concept because I have been involved with and dealt with organizations where there were no term limits, and we did have a rogue board that got in and would not leave, and it took lawsuits to get them out. So we definitely don't want to get into that situation.
And I think that's a great point. What do Ms. Richards, Ms. Paul, some of the others, what do you think about a 3-term limit compromise?
I mean, that's fine. As I think it's, you know, the idea of the term limits is more, and the people knowing there's an end date is the key thing. And then people know that, no, we're not going to become, as Joan says, a captive organization. So yes.
I concur, Kel.
Excellent.
I like the 3-term limit also, the 3 terms. That's
okay.
Good.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Joan, for proposing that. I think that's great. So let's consider for the time being the term limit issue resolved, and we will update that in the next draft. On the issue of number of officers and rotating election years, are there any comments or additional views on that?
Yes, Kyle, this is Jacqueline. I'm sorry I had to dash out a little while ago, so I missed a lot of the commentary, but I just walked back in the room to hear the comment about the number of officers, and I am in favor of the additional officers, particularly after what happened in this administration last year, where we lost our president, and I, as the vice president, had to step up into the presidency role that left the vice presidency position vacant, which you graciously volunteered to assume that role in an acting capacity because we had no other person from the community to volunteer to become vice president. So let me turn my video back on. So to prevent that situation from happening again in the future, if we had a second vice president who was already prepared and standing by, readily available to move into the first vice president position, it would alleviate one person having to wear multiple hats and assume, multiple responsibilities, which is just way too much. It's way too much. And we do have an individual who's expressed interest in that second vice president's position. So I feel very strongly that those are 2 positions that we should keep under the new bylaws.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Anybody else who hasn't yet spoken on this topic?
Just a quick question about the roles for the vice presidents. Are the roles clearly defined for the 2 vice presidents? And I'm sorry, I know it's in there, but
in the bylaws,
no,
the new bylaws.
It's okay. Yeah, I'll answer it quickly. So they are in the new bylaws. There's a paragraph on what each of the responsibilities are, and the president, first vice president, and second vice president are the 3 positions that would have an automatic line of succession. So if the president position is vacated, first vice president moves up into the presidency, second vice president moves up into the first vice president. So it's ensuring that we have continuity at those top levels. And in terms of their roles, the president is obviously the lead executive that chairs the board meetings, chairs the general body meetings. Vice president is charged with assisting in the leadership and administration and being prepared to step in to take that leadership role at any time. The second vice president is prepared to step in and take on the vice presidency role. So it's adding some redundancy, and I think there's flexibility left for the board to determine exactly how specific responsibilities for issues or priorities of the association would be divided between what is the first vice president's purview to lead and what is the second vice president's purview.
Okay. Thank you.
Cal, could you just go through each of the proposed leadership roles? Because they're nice and short, so everybody is clear whatever each role is. Because her recent comment gives a better clarity to the consideration of increasing it to 7 positions. Could you do that for a second?
So just to be clear, you would like me to read off what's in the proposed updated bylaws for the officer descriptions?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any objection to me taking a couple minutes to do that?
No objection.
Okay, so this you will find if you have it in front of you on page 5, the bottom of page 5 to page 6 of the proposed updated bylaws. So section 5.05 duties, subject to the control of the board, the duties of the officer shall include the following. The president shall call and preside over meetings of PBCCA members and the board, appoint and remove chairs and members of all committees, appoint representatives to other organizations, act as chief executive officer of PBCCA, manage its affairs, and execute contracts for PBCCA as authorized by the board. Now moving on to first vice president. First vice president shall work with the president and the second vice president in performing the duties and exercising the powers of the president, and shall exercise the duties and powers of the president in the president's absence or during any period of the president's disability or removal from office. The second vice president shall work with the president and the first vice president in performing the duties and exercising the powers of the president, and shall exercise the duties and powers of the president in the absence of the president and first vice president or during any period of the disability or removal from office of the first vice president. The secretary shall be responsible for recording the proceedings of membership meetings and the meetings of the board. The secretary shall provide written minutes of board meetings, shall maintain all permanent records, and perform such other duties as the president may prescribe. Minutes from board meetings and the voting member meetings shall be available to members within 30 days following the meeting date. The communications director, and for folks' awareness, communications director is a new title for an existing role, which is corresponding secretary. We updated the title because we feel like the role is now a bit broader than what was traditionally part of a corresponding secretary in other social media and other forms. So the communications director shall be the focal point and responsible for all written communications to parties or entities outside of the board, including without limitation, city council representatives, government officials, guest speakers, media, social media, local businesses, etc. The communications director shall also be responsible for collecting any PBCCA mail from the local U.S. Post Office box or from courier/delivery services and distributing it to the appropriate board member. The communications director shall also perform other duties as the president may prescribe. The treasurer shall be responsible for the receipt, custody, and disbursement of all PBCCA funds. The treasurer shall keep all necessary accounts, make a financial report at each meeting of the general membership and of the board, and present a written annual report and financial statement to the membership each calendar year. The treasurer shall have the authority to draw checks in the name of PBCCA as authorized by the budget. The parliamentarian shall be responsible for ensuring PBCCA board and voting member meetings are conducted using Robert's Rules of Order. That's all of the descriptions. Any follow-up questions or comments?
Just 2 quick ones I don't have a problem with the description of the president but I have a concern about them removing the members from because if you recruit somebody to chair a committee, it says you have determined that person has the right leadership skills for that particular committee, and that person is authorized to act on behalf of the community in good faith to do whatever duties are assigned to that committee, such as the Public Safety Committee or Benevolence Committee. I don't have a problem with the president appointing, but I think the chair should have the latitude to recruit members to his or her committee. And if they have an issue with someone on their committee, they should have the authority to remove that person from their committee. Because we want volunteers who want to do things like public safety, public works, education, benevolence, membership chair, etc., to feel we as a community have given them the authority to do their duties that are focused within the confines of those committees.
Thank you, Ms.
So I don't think the president should be able to appoint the chair and dismiss members. They can appoint the chair. I have no problem with that. But let's give the leadership in that committee the authority to recruit their membership in their committees and dismiss them if they feel necessary.
Okay, I'm going to pause for just a moment because we'll be moving to a new topic of committees, and just ask one more time if anybody else has any additional feedback on the number of officers or the proposed turnover of part of the board each year before we go back to the committee. Anything else on officers that anybody would like to say? Jasmine, yes, please.
Yeah, sorry, I just have one clarifying question, and maybe it's in there, but does an officer have to be a director?
Yes. So I think right now, the way in which the bylaws are structured, we talk about the board of directors and the officers as separate but overlapping entities. They have to be separately discussed for legal purposes, as you know. But right now, all officers are members of the board of directors, and all members of the board of directors are officers. We don't currently have distinctions.
Okay. Well, I would like to comment on that, and not on the officers, because I think, you know, you've made clear that the committee's fairly wedded to that, but you also do provide for up to 9 directors. So there would be 2 directors without, you know, an officer position. And I'm not sure that we need those 2 extra directors. Having looked at and now that you've read the roles of the officers, I'm not sure what those additional 2 directors are going to do. You know, in a small community, a 7-member board ought to be sufficient, especially since the first and second vice president really don't have specific roles other than assisting the president. So, so they're there to pick up, you know, any slack. And so what do the other 2 directors do? And do we really need those 2?
Thanks, Ms. Richards. That's an excellent question. So the intent there, and that was something that our lawyers, Latham and Watkins, suggested that language. And the intent was not to have 9 directors, but it was to preserve flexibility under the bylaws such that if the board and or the general body membership felt the need to add additional officer positions, they could do that without having to go back and amend the bylaws. So it was definitely not the case that the intent was for there to be 2 additional shadow board members, you know, without officer positions. I think you raise a good point, though. I think there's at least 2 options. We can either clarify that language, or if folks don't want the board and the general body to have that flexibility to create new positions that would be part of the executive board, then we can pull that out. I think the one downside of that is that if we were to decide that we wanted to add an additional board member and officer position, we would need to amend the bylaws. Ms. Richards.
Well, I guess my feeling is, I mean, if you clarified it, that's fine. You know, that then if I guess at some point we might decide we wanted, oh God, a chaplain or an IT person or something of the sort. But in any event, I mean, I guess it's kind of remote, but if you have clarifying language that you don't anticipate filling those at the time, that's a holding place. So, pardon me. So the clarifying language would be acceptable.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Any other questions or comments on the officers before I move back to Ms. Paul's committee questions? Stan, yes, please.
Yeah, I'm curious, how common is it to have two vice presidents? Is that unique or is that just commonplace?
No. Rosemary or Joan, do you want to talk about what we found when we looked at other bylaws for similar organizations?
I don't remember what was in the, this is Rosemary, in the other bylaws that we looked at, but I do know that another organization I belong to has frequently in the past had two vice presidents. And again, it's just to have somebody who is up to speed already on the situations and activities of the organization and can step in at a moment's notice and assume a position of leadership. So on and off, this organization has had a second vice president.
Yes, I remember we used Cleveland Park's bylaws as a a model to look at in putting together our bylaws, and I know that they did not have a second vice president, so it really is up to the organization. I do believe that because of our recent experience and the burdens that it's placed on Jacqueline, it is a good idea to allow for a second vice president, even if that position doesn't get filled when we do elections. I think it's just good to have the flexibility to have that position available because, it would have really been helpful had we had that position and it had been filled in light of recent events with our organization.
Thank you both. I actually just double checked because I have the Hillcrest Community Association bylaws and the Cleveland Park ones in front of me. Both of them actually do have first and second vice presidents. So
they do have,
it was somewhat common in the examples that we looked at, but some, as Joan pointed out, some didn't have them. So it's certainly up to the organizations.
And did you ask them how that goes for them? Does that work out well for them? I'm just envisioning like the two vice presidents like duking it out, trying to do the same job. I mean, do they like having two vice presidents?
We did not speak specifically to them. I think by implication, both of those organizations have had those bylaws in operation for over a decade in that form. And so presumably if there was serious problems with it, they might have tried to change it. But no, that's something that I'm happy to do though, and report back to the group if you think it would be helpful.
I'm just curious, yeah, because maybe it's been there for 10 years because they don't want to change the bylaws. As you know, this kind of it's a job.
Look, changing the bylaws is fun and easy. Don't let anybody tell you any otherwise.
Okay.
Hey, Cal, add the question to them. Are those positions currently filled?
Absolutely. Okay, I commit to this group that I will ask both Hillcrest and Cleveland Park how they have felt about having a first vice president, second vice president, and if those positions are currently filled, and I'll report back to the group.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Ms. Paul's question. Thank you for being patient with it, Ms. Paul. It's on the bottom of page 6 and the beginning of page 7 under Article 6, Advisory Committees, Section 6.01. So what, Ms. Paul, and please correct me if I'm wrong, what you're drawing attention to is what the responsibilities are of the president and the board with respect to appointing the chair and what authorities they delegate to the chair of a given committee, particularly with respect to adding and removing members and things like that. And I will start with a bit of an answer to this, invite others, and then we can have an open discussion about it. So as
Can I further clarify for a second?
Yes, please.
In your description, historically, because these people interact more frequently with larger members of the community, many members who, whether they were young or old, did not come to the community meetings, such as the acting block captain coordinator, they were members of the board and had the same privileges as the officers in terms of sharing their visual perception of what's taking place in the community, the desires of the community. But yet in your thing, you're eliminating their ability to recruit members because you're charging the president with the authority to not only elect the chair, but to infers election of the members who report to that chair and dismissing them, and them not being a member of the board with a vote because they are the eyes and ears for the board into the community.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Paul. I appreciate the clarification. I'm looking at this section. Give me just one moment to clarify one thing so that I give you the right information. Okay, so a couple of points. So first, I signaled this in the early summary about committees. So committees as part of 501c3s under DC law and federal law, there is kind of prescribed requirements on the types of committees and then what they're legally authorized to do as part of the requirements for fiduciary duties and control over organizations. And so the options are, and you can have one or the other, or you can have both as part of your organizations. It's either board committees are acceptable or advisory committees, or again, you can have both. But you can't kind of merge the two functions. Board committees can only be composed of elected board members. And they are able, because they're composed of elected board members, to be delegated the authority to act on behalf of the organization. And that's because they were brought into their positions as board members or officers via direct democratic elections that put them in those positions. And so they can, for example, use if you were to have board committees, they could use the Penn branch name and they could make decisions and they could take action on them without having to necessarily go back to the board or go back to the general body to get a vote. That is something that is typically used in much larger 501c3 organizations where they have sometimes 10 or more board members and they have a wide-ranging organization where they need to break off into committees that could then do business on behalf of the board, so that a board that maybe only meets once or twice a year can take up and approve reports, but doesn't have to convene to approve every single action that these elected members were taking on behalf of the organization. So that's what board committees are. Advisory committees can be composed of any member of the organization, but they cannot, since they're not elected by the members of the organization, they cannot take action specifically on behalf of the association. They have to go through the board and let the board take action, because the board ultimately bears the fiduciary legal responsibility for the actions of the organization, and they're the ones who are accountable to the voting members of the population. So in our case, the bylaw subcommittee thought advisory committees is what we wanted for a couple of reasons. One, we want to have as broad participation as possible from our members in those committees. And two, our board is not big enough and we don't have the kind of budget and span of mission that would require giving a couple of board members authority to kind of go off and make decisions and take actions on their own. We also thought we meet frequently enough and we want that kind of group accountability to ensure that a couple of people can't start writing checks and getting us into situations that the entire board isn't aware of. So again, we said advisory committees. Now, that means that advisory committees have to have a special relationship with the board where it's constant hand in glove communication and coordination, and the advisory committees can do whatever it is they're charged by the board with doing, and then bring recommendations for action to the board and to the general body. With respect to your question about appointing and removing members, the way that the current draft says it, it's the board that gets to appoint the chair. So it is not solely a presidential decision. It is something that the board decides on. Similarly, removing chairs of advisory committees is something that the board has to agree on. It can't be a unilateral decision of one officer. So it has to be something the board decides on. And on your point about committee membership, we envision it, and these bylaws support that getting members onto these advisory committees is a shared responsibility of everyone, the board as well as the chairs of those committees. So if you, for example, were chair of City Services Committee, then we would want you to be recruiting members and for the board to be trying to recruit members so that we have maximum participation. So that was a lengthy answer, but I wanted to get that all out there quickly. Joan, Rosemary, do you have anything to add before we go back to additional comments or questions?
No, that was a good summary.
This is Laura. I have a comment on the committee membership. I also, as I read this, it says the chair shall appoint the members of the committee. And I know you've explained the chair will do that in connection with the committee chair, but my concern is that this leaves no opportunity for members of the community to volunteer to join committees. So I'm reading this as a member of the community, and it says, well, I joined the organization and pay my dues, and then I have to, if I can volunteer to join a group, but I have to wait to be approved by the committee chair and ultimately the chair of the organization. And I know that I thought, well, gee, I'm applying to give up my time and energy, and that the idea, the way this is written, it's contrary to the stated mission, which is to encourage participation, and it's off-putting because basically it says that you have to apply to work on behalf of your community. That's the way it reads, no matter what you intended, and I assure you it will not go down well.
Ms. Richards, I think that's a fair point. I looked at it as you're talking, and I think that might have unintended consequences like you described that we certainly don't want to be the case. So I want to invite discussion, but one proposal that I might put on the table is that we allow for people in the bylaws explicitly to volunteer and join a committee as a member, but then we retain the right of the board to remove people from those committees if there is cause. So there's a process and they have to vote on it, but that, like you say, we don't need to put an additional barrier to people raising their hand and jumping in and volunteering to those committees and having to wait for board action. Quickly, Ms. Richards, would that address your comment and concern?
It would help. It's still, but again, the idea that the president or the committee chair can remove you for cause, people don't go in with that expectation. I think if you simply state the chair shall, the chairman of the president of the group of the organization shall appoint committee chairs, and if you leave it at that, that's fine. Nobody expects anyone to be allowed to stay on a committee who's being disruptive. I mean, the usual tendency is to for people not to be active, and you can have a blanket when you get to removals. You could just put in a phrase or add something there that in addition to provisions for removing officers or board directors, you can say like in addition, committee members may be removed for repeated disruptive or for cause or something like that by the committee chair with consent of the organization chair.
Thanks, Ms. Richards. Quick
as soon as you put.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
Okay, I think that is helpful. I think a couple of things. It makes sense to me that we want to smooth this process for people to be able to volunteer. I think coming back to some of the discussions we had earlier about officers and about then legal responsibility, we need to ensure that there is space for the elected members of the board to have some oversight and to proactively appoint committee members at the beginning of terms and then to have the ability to remove. I think, like you said, we can put that language in the removal section and ensure that it's covered because we need to ensure that just like officers, that the committees and the committee leaders are responsive to the organization, and that we don't inadvertently have a committee or anyone that remains in that position indefinitely and is unable to be removed or challenged if other people want to be involved, or if the board would like to go in a different direction, the elected board. And so I'm on board with what you're saying, and I think we can look at ways to change that language and make sure that it's something that you feel addresses your concerns. But I think as long as we make it easy for people to volunteer and get involved, and then retain the legal requirements that the board exercises oversight over these unelected officials, then I think we would be in good standing. Joan, Rosemary, anything that you would like to add? Open to other questions?
No, I agree with that. And I'm thinking perhaps, Laura, if you could propose language to actually change that section, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, I'll send out some proposed language just as a starting point, and then people can respond, and I'm sure we'll come up with something, because I think we're all in agreement on the outcome we want.
Cal, you said something important when you were, making a clear justification for how it's written now, and that was the consistency of what is presented, and people can't go out there. For example, my historical knowledge says that these advisory committees were part of the board for that reason. They would present at the executive committee meetings any tasks they were doing, any proposals of activities they wanted to do on behalf of the community, get the board to vote on it, and concur that, one, the executive board meetings minutes would be presented to the community with those recommendations. Sometimes it would be activities that the Ways and Means Committee says they want to go to Philadelphia for the flower show as a fundraiser. And the board says, hey, that's a great idea, 4 months planning ahead. And then they go and present that information to the full body, and the body says, yes, I want to go, and here's what it's going to cost. But not to have these committees as an integral part of the board, when would you know what the public safety, the membership committee, the hospitality committee, et cetera, are doing? And by having them on the board consistently present when the officers are in dialogue, how do you know what's going on in the community? Again, I go back to the block captain coordinator, who may be interfacing through his distribution of a newsletter in blocks and find that we have 2 handicapped seniors that need our help. How do you not have that? Because you said it eloquently. You do not want somebody, okay, I'm gonna conclude. The chairs will respect the position of the board, present what they would like to do, and if the board votes it up, they execute in the full body meeting by sharing it and tell the community why they want to do it, how it affects them, to get total buy-in by the community.
Thanks, Ms. Paul. I think you make a really excellent point. And I think that these updated bylaws that we're proposing are agnostic about who is invited to board meetings. I think as a practice that we have used over this term, and I think there's no reason that couldn't continue in future administrations, it does make sense for committee chairs to be present at and participate in portions of board meetings. I think the important part is that under these bylaws, those folks wouldn't have voting membership in the board of directors because they're not elected to those positions. They're appointed, they volunteer. But I think having our committee chairs present and able to report on their activities and hear the discussions with the understanding that when action must be taken and if sensitive discussions have to happen that are board only, those people might have to step out for a period or at the end or at the beginning. That seems to me entirely consistent with these bylaws and also just an organizational best practice. So I think we can go back and look and make sure that there's no language that prohibits that. And if helpful, we can insert something that indicates that we think that would be ideal. but these bylaws are intended to capture the legal requirements and things that we have to avoid. And so who participates at those meetings for the purposes of voting is what's most important.
I think you've made a just cause, Cal, but I again want to say the bylaws are critical and you all are doing a stellar job, number one. Number two, we can't have a community group in the boundaries of what we call Penn Branch without these committees. And these committees must feel like they are an integral part of the organization, and what they have to offer is of value to this board. I don't have a problem with, I just think for comfort level of future committee chairs, they cannot, I don't want to argue about them having a right to vote, because from Robert's rules, if they present something, they can't vote anyway. You know, if you put something on the table for the board to consider, you can't vote anyway. You just present the idea, the reason why you think the community should embrace the idea. Then you sit back and let the board discuss it and they vote on it. So you don't have a right to vote at that point anyway. I just think inclusivity of these committee chairs is so critical. And once you pass the bylaws, you should run with all good speed and reinstitute all of these committees that you have listed, because right now the community has no committees.
Kyle, this is Jacqueline. I'd like to chime in here and just clarify for the record that the community does in fact have committees. The board have committees. The committee chairs for the membership, for the block captains, for the hospitality, for maybe I forgot one or two others, but those individuals have participated in regular monthly board meetings with the board. And since I've been president, and I recall too, while Shannon was president under this administration, that 9 times out of 10 during our monthly board meetings, we had monthly executive board meetings where the board members and the committee chairs all participated in those meetings. The feedback from the community was introduced in those meetings. Recommendations, suggestions were introduced in those meetings. We were kept abreast of what was going on in the community, what the concerns were. And I too feel that it's important for those committee chairs to participate in those meetings. And I think according to the current bylaws, there are board members and there are executive board members. Technically speaking, the board should be meeting separately at certain times, like what we had yesterday virtually. And then there are times when if there are activities going on in the community, recommendations, there would be and should be executive board meetings. But in our case, under our administration, we've had more executive board meetings than we have had traditional board meetings. So the notion that that information or those individuals hadn't participated, Ms. Paul, is absolutely false.
15 seconds. 15 seconds.
I'm the point that I wanted to make, that it is critical. I agree for the chairpersons to participate in those meetings at the appropriate time.
Now, could I speak?
Quick question. Quick question, folks. We're at 11:19. Just note that we're at 11:19, and I'm sure we have additional topics, but just wanted folks to know that we are now actually at 11:20.
Thank you, Elsa. I'm watching the clock as well, so we've got 10 more minutes. Again, I want to be respectful of people's time. If we don't get through everyone's questions and comments, please send them to me at my email address that I've sent out in the email, or info@PennBranchDC. We will address those questions and we will hold another one of these sessions if we need to. Jimmy, you had something?
Yeah, Kyle, I just had a brief comment. One, I want to thank all of you for what you've done, and having served as president also. I do like the general direction of this, because I think a lot of the speed bumps we hit have been because there was a lack of clarification. I do think that having the structure, the proposed structure, whether it's first and second vice president, it does lead back to the executive board, the elective officers being responsible for the oversight and fiduciary responsibility, as you said. And I think on the committee, just to speak directly to that, for the subcommittees, what it does do is allow the subcommittees to be responsible specifically for their subcommittees. And one of the problems we've had is that subcommittee members have been included in the board member and become de facto responsible for areas that were really designed for the executive board and the elected officers. So I just wanted to say I applaud you all for what you're doing, because this attempt does go for a long time and does provide clarity, not only for people here, but, with expectations that it provides some clarity and a guideline and a framework that doesn't constrict future leaders, but does give them a general framework of how we'll move forward, in the year 2021 and beyond. And things have changed so much from the way that they operated 5 years ago and 10 years ago. So that's my only comment to saying I recognize the difficulty and I applaud what you've done. And I'm going to stop because I do see Jalon has her hand up.
All right. Thank you, Jimmy. Jalon, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to also echo Jimmy's statements. Sorry, the kids are being loud, but as one of the newer members in the community who doesn't have a legal background, I thank you guys so much for this overview and for breaking things down. I think the historical perspectives that Miss Alberta provides are wonderful as well, but just from our end of newer community members, I do like the part of the committees being accountable to the elected officials and the boards, amongst neighbors, just talking the transparency and accountability piece in the past has been somewhat shrouded in this mystery, and some of us get so confused of who's doing what. So I thank you guys so much for clarifying things and also making the board and the committee members accountable to the elected officials on the board. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Excellent. Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay.
Is there anybody who hasn't yet had an opportunity to ask a question? Paul, Jasmine, others, Terry, Stephanie, that would like to ask a question before we run out of time?
I have one more question if no one else who hasn't spoken before wants to go.
Okay, pause just 1 second.
Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, Ms. Richards, over to you.
Okay, that was on the budget. Again, goes to member participation. It says that the board shall prepare and present to the a budget to the membership, and I would suggest that be present for approval of the membership. Again, if you tell people we're going to collect your dues, then we're going to tell you how we're going to spend your money. Problems. Most organizations I know present the budget to the membership for approval.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the specific suggestion. Rosemary, do you have any feedback or thoughts on that immediately?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with Laura that the budget should be submitted for approval by the general body.
Thank you.
Joan, what do you think? Any other comments?
Can I have
I agree.
Statement,
I agree with Laura and Rosemary. Both make a great point, and it makes sense to me.
Okay, it makes sense to me as well. Ms. Paul, did you want to get in and say something?
Yeah, just clarification. What I was trying to say, and sometimes I just talk too long, is that the committees would be accountable to the board, should have always been accountable to the board, because they would present whatever they thought they wanted to work on to the board for the board's first approval. And then the board, not the committee, would present that to the whole community at its next available meeting for them to consider it and approve or disapprove what activity that particular committee had suggested we participate in. I'm not saying that the committees should be honky-tonky and running around making decisions using our stationer or anything. Anything sent out under the committees would have been approved by the board and the whole community.
I think that makes sense, Ms. Paul. I think that's consistent with what we have in the bylaws, that the advisory committees would make recommendations to the board. the board would have the opportunity to approve or disapprove, and then if they felt necessary with either budget implications or just as a best practice to get community involvement and participation, to then determine at their discretion what they take to the general body for a vote. But certainly I think communication from what committee chairs would like to do, what they have been doing to the board, and then the opportunity to then communicate that to the general body, that is absolutely best practice and certainly what these bylaws intend to support.
And it would be helpful if you would put on the website our current list of committees and people who are in those positions.
Okay.
It's already on the website.
All right, thanks, Jack. All right, we have just a little less than 5 minutes left. Anybody else have additional feedback on anything we've talked about, or any new comments or questions on any topic?
Yes, Kyle, this is Jacqueline. Off the topic for a moment, I would just like to take a moment to recognize you for all the hard work that you do in the community and outside of the community and in your professional life. I was absolutely so proud of you in your recent interview with Rachel Maddow in regards to the stance that you took against this administration, the courage that it took to do that. So I just wanted to make the other community members aware of what a courageous individual we have in yourself, and in taking a stance for what you believe in and against what you know is wrong. So thank you. We're so proud to have you in the community and a part of our team.
Encore, yay, yay, Kyle. Absolutely concur.
Hey, Kyle, can you give us a link to that interview?
Sure, Stan, I'm happy to send it to you, but thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you.
I've been meaning to on the website with your concurrence, of course, but I wanted to have an opportunity to get your approval before I did that. So
great.
Sure.
Yeah, I saw the Twitter feed, the picture, but that's all I saw. I didn't see the video. I was looking.
Yeah. I'm happy to have it up there. Thank you very much. And honestly, this community that Kathleen and I have now lived in for 3.5 years, we are very to be part of it and to feel kind of welcomed and accepted and have the opportunity to help in the ways that we can. So thank you all. I count all of you as friends and neighbors, and very glad to have you. Again, Terry, it looked like maybe you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, first of all, say I'm proud also to have you as a neighbor, and everything that Jacqueline said, I'd like to second. And we're really proud to have you here. And we moved in around the same time. And since you've been here, you've shown us nothing but class. And so we appreciate everything you're doing for all of us to represent us. But I wanted to talk offline regarding some ideas I had regarding liaison to 6D, to MPD, 6th District, and reporting of safety and security in the neighborhood, and some ideas I had about a liaison that I might be able to help you, so people have someone to go to with security issues, that I could kind of represent the community in that area. So at your leisure, I'd like to talk to you about some ideas I had about that, community watch and things like that.
Yeah, Terry, that's wonderful. Thank you. And I know that you have a lot.
Great volunteering, Terry. I love it. You and the big dog.
Woof, we have to do.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
Terry, and to piggyback off that, I recently exchanged emails with Miss Julie Rones, who lives on O Street, who experienced a home invasion a few days ago now, and she's offered us some suggestions and recommendations of what we could put in the newsletter or send out to the community in regards to things they can do to be more diligent and vigilant about awareness and safety within their homes. So we're working towards getting some of that information in the September newsletter.
Well, that's great. And Kyle, I offer you, again, when I said I have some ideas, I'd offer you to help work with you guys and maybe even establish some type of formal position where somebody is a representative for the security issues and can go to 6D, to the commander, and work with 6D to get our issues known and get some kind of active measures in place where we could have a direct liaison and contact with them when there are issues. So thanks.
I encourage us to reinstitute the Public Safety Committee, and I will scan and email the Public Safety Committee file to both Cal, the president, and any others interested in looking at, because they were super active. Many of you see Mrs. Board, who still has the public safety emblem. We used to have a public safety committee that not only did what you just said, Terry, interacted directly with 6D. They were provided training from 6D and the Federal Bureau of Investigation every 2 years. In addition, they sent them direct reports, weekly crime reports for our single member districts to that committee, which then could be shared with the board. Further, they also had a presence. They had signs on their cars, and they had 24-hour shifts that went through our community and stopping these break-ins of cars, etc. So I take my hat off to you and the big dog.
Can I add? I want to add something to that. I think we also need to be very respectful in the community that many of us are uncomfortable with the police. So I love hearing that neighbors are going to be involved in this. I feel safe if I know you, Terry, are watching out for me. But I want us to make sure we're being respectful of that, and just also know that there are international standards for crime prevention that don't necessarily involve the police, that involve community members, community accountabilities as well. So I want to make sure that we have a lot of members in our community that are a part of those movements. And I want to make sure that we are building on the strength of our own community to make all of us more safe. So I just want to say that.
Yes, Jalen, and my intent with Kyle is, and I know we're over, so I'll defer, but my intent is to use people that I know in the community that are part of the community that have backgrounds in this area to do the actual liaison and work, and not have this place crawling with police again. So I respect what you're saying, and the intent is to actively liaison and stop some of this stuff that's going on that doesn't have to be. Thanks.
And utilize security cameras.
Yes, they work.
All right, thanks everybody. Cal, I know it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, okay. Let me ask Joan, do you have any concluding comments?
No, I just want to thank everybody for their participation and collaboration. It's really been a great process, and I look forward to continuing it.
Well, thanks for all your work, committee. I know this has been a slog.
Thank you. Rosemary, anything else that you'd like to add?
Yes, I'd like to thank you, Kyle, for your leadership on this issue, because yes, it's been a slog. And Kyle has carried the most of the burden, and the rest of us has helped him along, but he really provided good leadership on this. Thank you.
Thank you. This has been an excellent team effort, and we're not done yet. We really appreciate everybody making the time to participate today. If you have more questions, feedback, please don't hesitate to email. If you have specific line changes that you'd like, please try to get them to me and to info@Penn Branch by the end of this week, by next Saturday. The board is meeting this week, and we'll talk about next steps after that regarding whether we need another one of these sessions or if we're just going to publicize an updated draft, and then looking ahead to when we want to bring these things to a vote. But appreciate this very much. We didn't talk about anything on the Articles of Incorporation. If anybody has questions about those documents are intended to work together, and they legally need to be consistent with each other. And so that's why we made some updates to that. Any questions, anything else, don't hesitate to let me know. Thank you all again very much for joining, and we'll be in touch soon. Have a great weekend.
Cal, thank you again, and I encourage everybody to add a neighbor to the next call so more people are participating. Share your information, phone call your neighbors, and get more of your neighbors involved so they can stop saying they didn't know. It's your job, our job, to spread the word.
You're here.
Agreed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
It was good. It was actually good. They changed the
Come on, how do I get up to me?